This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And yet hasn't quite made that transition yet to Toronto. I've been going on about this for a while, but got landed a job there and can't seem to get moved there. What can you do? But I'm still here in New Brunswick, a place where nobody knows about. Even my guest today wasn't familiar with it. But then again, nobody is. It's a province in Canada nobody's familiar with, New Brunswick. And today is New Brunswick Day. And I think we're the only ones that know about it. But folks, here we are on August the 7th, 2023, and I'm wearing my Exorcist shirt today, which I just got because unfortunately today I just learned that director William Friedkin had passed away. And of course, he had made The Exorcist, he made The French Connection, Cruising, Live and Die in LA, and all kinds of movies, and always loved his commentary tracks, always very well spoken and informative. So condolences to his family. I certainly had a lot of respect for him as a filmmaker. But speaking of exorcists, it's a great tie-in with my guest, who's all about the paranormal, and or in the case of me and Skittles here, abnormal. Folks, I give you the awesome Kevin Kane. How do you do, Kevin?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's been a rough 2023 for me, I'll tell you that, yeah. I lost a job earlier this year due to gaslighting and luckily I'm still working another job, so it's been a hard year, but I it's hard because I got a job in Toronto and I can't seem to get there because I don't know what this new trend is with. I mean, it's bad enough it happens on the phone with your credit card, but scammers are everywhere, and I can't seem
Oh
to
yeah.
land a bachelor apartment in Toronto because everybody wants to rip me off.
Oh
And then
yeah.
on top of that, finding a place where I could take my cat.
And the calling all day too. I hate the scam calls.
Yeah. I mean, I uploaded a video of my cat last night and it's got very close to 200 views in 24 hours. And I'm like, okay, if you like my cat so much, open a place up so we can take him. No, we just like watching him. We don't want him around. Isn't that right, Skittles? He says he wants no part of this. No part of this at all. He's gonna lick himself and pretend he didn't hear me. But nonetheless, my younger brother was doing what you had told me you were doing, um, taking care of our terminally ill folks, and I know that you were taking care of your dad, and that's always a great thing to do. Um, That's something I don't think I could do. There's certain people that can handle that kind of thing, and there's certain people that can't. And you're obviously one of the people that can. So your dad's lucky to have you around.
Yeah, I was apparently blessed with a lot of patience because it does take that, especially with an elderly person who's just I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, bitter, uh, kind of negative a lot of times because of what he's going through. And when they start getting angry in a response to that, you have to try to control yourself and kind of back off and not explode at them like you feel like you might normally feel like doing. You just have to have some strong patience.
Well, you know what? It's I was connected to I had Cindy Hines from the Brood on last month, and I was so happy to get her on here. It's but uh that's been a while, and I'm doing a convention in Toronto in October, and I'm gonna be assisting Lisa Langlois at Frightmare in the Falls because I was actually talking to Lisa today, and we've remained friends. She's been on the show a couple times, and we've remained friends since we first met in person in 2017, and so I'm looking forward to going down there and assist her at that. But one of the things I plan to do when I go down there is meet Cindy because Cindy's not part of Frightmare in the Falls, but she lives in down there in Toronto, and said I'd love to meet her. So, how did you get connected with her?
And gosh, I can't believe it's already been several years, but I've always loved The Brood, the movie she did, David Cronenberg. And the first time I saw that was when I was a kid, and it just stuck with me. It was one of the more, I mean, especially when you're a kid watching it, it was one of the more horrifying movies I'd seen with those crazy looking kids, monster kids.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that was TV. I got a double dose when I first saw it, unedited, and saw Samantha Agar and all her glory in that scene toward the end when she's got the baby hanging out. Um, so twice that movie's shocked me, but I just love her in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first saw it, I was the same age that she was in the movie, even though she's a little older than me in real life. So it was, I felt connected to this character, and then as I got older, I watched the movie several times because they played it. It was a favorite down here, where in my town here in Birmingham, we have those. Well, not just here, but nationwide, we have a station called USA Network, and on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday nights they had a little thing, and I wish they did it today, but they don't do these anymore. But they had one of those schlock theater type things called Saturday Nightmares. And I don't know how many times they played The Brood. At least once or twice a year they'd play it, and we'd always watch it. So that's how I knew who she was. And then years later, what was it, 2016, around in there, I had seen some of these former child stars, some fan pages popping up on Facebook and online elsewhere. And I got to thinking about Cindy Hines. I said, I wonder if anybody ever did anything for her, because I mean, unfortunately, she didn't get to be as well known since she only did it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But still, what she did. These are some well-known movies. The Dead Zone, the movie she did with Jack Palance. And I said, well, you know what? I could go on there and do a fan page for her on Facebook. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I love collecting autographs, and whether it's through fan mail or going to conventions and getting to actually meet the celebrities, or online. Some of them are connected to their fans through their websites, which I think is awesome. And I got to thinking, when I did that, I said, I never tried writing a fan letter to this woman, but she hasn't been acting in a long time. I bet she doesn't do that. But I pulled her up online because I got to thinking, what is she doing these days? You never hear about her. So I did a little search. It didn't take long to find her real estate information, real estate agency information. And that face popped up. And even though it's 40 years later, you couldn't miss that being a little Candy from The Brood. So I said, well, it's probably not a good thing to do, but maybe I should send a fan letter. And I hate to use somebody's business address for that when they're not in showbiz anymore, but hey, it's worth a shot. And I sent it, and I just included in the letter. Oh, and I have a little Facebook fan page set up. If you ever want to check it out, here's the link, or here's what to look for when you search for it. So I sent that through snail mail to Canada. And a month, maybe a little over a month later, I actually get a response with a couple of autographed photos and a letter from her saying, oh, I checked you out on Facebook. I love what you did. Call me.
Wow.
I've never had, and of course, she's not your typical celebrity, though, but I've never had a celebrity say, respond like that before. So I did. I called her, when I had a break from work during the day, because I wasn't sure how Canada versus American time or US time zone worked. So I thought, probably safe to call her mid-afternoon and not too late. And that timed it just right because she was at her phone number, and we talked for, gosh, a half hour or more on the phone. And then, because I was part of a show a little bit later on, I was part of a show called Abnormal Alabama while it was
Mhm.
still running on YouTube. The main host retired from that, so we don't do it anymore. But uh, he was looking for, well, we like to talk about strange and unusual. We were looking for new ideas, and it dawned on me. I said, you know what? I'm friends with a former celebrity on Facebook. She's not Alabama native, but who cares? Why not get her on? And he's like, you should have told me this. Yeah, get her on. So we got Cindy on the show for a couple of hours live one night and just had a blast going back and forth. So that was the first time I got to be like we're doing online, seeing her and talking to her instead of just on the phone.
Mhm.
So that was it. That's basically it. And we've kept in touch on Facebook. I still post things on the Cindy Hines Facebook fan page. In fact, 2 days ago, I made a split picture of her then and now and put it out there. And I love that she always comes on there and likes it and comments and shares it on her personal Facebook as well. She's awesome and fun to talk to. But well, you know that you've gotten to talk to her.
Yep. No, I just got affiliated with her this year, and
Oh,
I'm hoping to meet her this October when I go to Toronto. So that is in the plans. But she's awesome. She's very friendly to talk to, and Skittles is around here. I'm gonna see if I can get him up on screen here.
yeah, I've got a cat here, Maddie, but she's already out of the room now. She knocked, I
Yeah.
don't know if you heard a clicking noise 5 minutes ago, but she knocked a peg off my desk.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, we have indoor and outdoor cat here.
We well, mine was an outdoor cat, and then well, I'm living in the city here in a bachelor apartment right now, so yeah, I don't want him outside in the traffic.
No, yeah, we're okay because we're our house is in the country, a good distance away from the highway, and our
Hmm.
outdoor cat, she stays here. She has her territory here, so she's pretty safe.
Oh, he got away. You little shit, you got away. Oh, he knows it too. He knows
Uh-huh.
yeah, he knows I'm gonna put him on camera. Oh, well, anyway, yeah, so I'm hoping to meet Cindy Hines this fall, when I visit Toronto. And so like I said, I'm good friends with Lisa Langlois, so I'm looking forward to assisting her at the event down there. So yeah. But nonetheless, let's talk about what you're doing now, because that's quite fascinating. Because I even asked Cindy about that. You're you're an author and you're a collector of dolls, and not just any dolls, dolls with a history.
Yes.
Now, how did you get there? You go. Uh, that one looks very, very happy. How many dolls did you get from Cindy? Like, is she like passing the brood children off? Because
That would
I heard when she got into real estate, uh, originally she was just trying to find housing for all these deformed mutant kids.
I wish they did have they never done that. They should have made some brood dolls out of those little, look those little kids
Hmm?
from the movie, and then have a little candy doll, Cindy's doll. They never did that. I guess they just didn't think it was appropriate to market that movie like that. But that would be so cool now to do it.
Why not do it? I bet you'd
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. But yeah, I don't, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've ever gotten a haunted item out of Canada yet. I've gotten them all over the United States. People have sent them to me from England, from Australia. There's a few that actually came from Mexico, from the Island of the Dolls, if you can
Hmm.
believe that. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been on TV several times. And but I've never gotten a haunted item out of Canada. Maybe the closest is in upstate New York. A lady sent me a haunted item from her house, but never from Canada. I don't know if maybe they
Do you
just haven't
ever?
heard of me up there yet, or they don't have as many haunted items in Canada. I don't
They got me and they get Skittles. That's pretty much.
know.
Do you have a Chucky or an Annabelle or a Megan?
I do have a replica Chucky doll, the way he looks in the beginning with the bright cherry face. I don't have the scarred, ugly Chucky
Hmm.
yet, but I've got the good guy doll as it looked before it was possessed. So I've got a replica of that. I've got a replica of the Annabelle movie doll.
Hmm.
You can get these at Trick or Treat Studios. They're expensive, but they're awesome. And I don't have a Megan doll. I've been wondering. Well, there's an artist out there. They're extremely expensive, but there's an artist that did recently start putting some Megan replica dolls out there, life size, but they're just dolls, not electronic or anything. But they're expensive. But I'm waiting on Trick or Treat Studios one day to start putting Megan dolls out like they did with Chucky and Annabelle
Yeah.
anytime now. But yeah, along with my haunted dolls, I do have a few of the replica dolls that aren't haunted, but just fun to have as a horror fan. Um, I don't have a exact replica of the real Annabelle doll. I have met her a few years ago, uh, but I do have a vintage Knickerbocker Raggedy Ann doll, almost exactly like it, same size, but the hair isn't quite as long, but it was manufactured the same time, same type of Raggedy Ann doll. And I do have a replica Robert the doll from Key West. It's a smaller version. That's all I have as far as the replica famous dolls and movie doll. Oh, I have an actual puppet, a screen used puppet. I don't know if you've heard of a movie called It's Alive
Yep.
from the 70s, The Killer Baby. I've got one of the puppets they used in the original movie, probably using the second one too, but definitely in the original one, it's fits on your hand and it's got the swaddling blanket looking thing around it. And you can tell it's all old, the latex is cracked and it makes it scarier looking now. It's more gray in color from age. But it was the one they had in the scene toward the end of the sewer when he's holding the baby
Hmm.
and they made it look like with the puppet, that's his hand, and they're moving it around. So he's actually working the puppet. It looks like it's a real baby, but I've got that puppet now. And for
Yeah, I
fun,
was born in the early 70s, so I would have been I think that first one came out, I think in 74, so I would have been two when that came out originally. So yeah.
yeah,
So anyway, um so you're an author, and
yes,
as I said when I come on here, but I don't know, I said it before I started recording, but um I was looking you up when Cindy Hines had connected us, and there's a lot of Kevin Kanes on the internet, so I didn't catch your web page until I went on your Facebook page, and I saw it, and it didn't jump right out at me, so I didn't see that right away when I originally checked out your page. So I went on there and I was looking at, you got quite a collection of dolls, which is pretty awesome, you know. So anyway, what did you start first, being an author or a collector of the dolls, or did they both come simultaneously?
honestly, the author part came first. Uh, I had loved writing stories since I was a little kid. My first little ghost story I wrote, like one page little ghost story. I think I was third grade at the time when I wrote it, but I kept with it writing little stories. And then when I was a teenager in high school, I actually published a couple of short stories in a student magazine. So that was my first time being a published author. And it was a magazine called The Porphyra. I'm not sure if they still publish that, but it was out during the 90s. And so that got me published. And I said, wow. And when I got in college, one of our theater teachers there, Lee Eric Shackelford, used to be a writer for TV back in the 80s and early 90s. And in fact, he wrote a couple of episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, but he didn't stay in the TV business long. He said it's too cutthroat. So he came back here to his hometown of Birmingham and taught drama and did stage plays and continued writing plays. But he got me interested in writing screenplays. So I tried my hand at that for several years and came very close to getting a screenplay actually produced. And it got, I guess you could use the term, kicked out. They decided not to go forward with it. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to my roots. I'm going to be just a creative writer. And in 2013, I published my first actual full book, which was a book called Thanksgiving Hen on a Chicken Shed, Stories My Grandmother Told Me. And it's funny enough, it's not a paranormal, even though paranormal was my forte, it's not a paranormal book. It's got a couple of creepy stories, but it's mainly funny stories my grandmother used to tell me when I was growing up about her experiences in Alabama during the Depression
Hmm?
and how they tried to make do with what they had and have fun during such a rough time. And, two world wars and a depression back then. So about that time, as far as the paranormal, I had been an investigator since 2003. I got interested in ghosts because I grew up in a house in central Alabama here that was built on, the whole neighborhood was built on what used to be Cherokee Native American burial ground and grounds where they lived. In fact, we would always go out in the woods digging to see what we could find. We'd find old arrowheads and pieces of old pottery, you know, broken pieces. And one of one of the neighborhood dogs came out of the woods one time with a human jawbone, scared everybody to death. But when it was investigated, they said that's one of the old, probably Native American graves out there it dug into because that's a very old jawbone that was over 100 years old or 200 years old, something like that. So anyway, we also had an old cemetery out there dating back to the early 1800s, and they still use it today. And it's right behind the neighboring houses. In fact, some of the graves come up to the backyards of people's houses. So every house there had a creepy story. Everybody had something happen to them. Footsteps in the hallways at night, doors slamming shut, voices, disembodied voices, footsteps in the attic. We had a lot of that in my house. And that, plus I loved reading ghost stories anyway, got me interested in paranormal very early. So I was fresh out of college. I was going around investigating haunted places here locally. My brother went with me on a few excursions. And this is prior to all these paranormal shows that started coming on TV on
Hmm.
Travel Channel, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, all these things. It was not talked about a lot. All of a sudden, those shows came up, and it's a popular thing. Ghost hunting just becomes a huge thing. So me and my brother, and mainly myself, I'd start traveling around the country investigating places from South Carolina to I went all the way out to the Queen Mary in California and investigated one day on the ship there. And around 2013, I met Kim Johnston of Scare of Alabama. It was sort of a newly formed paranormal team housed right here, and I'd been looking for a team to join to help investigate haunted places here at home and help people with paranormal problems. About that time, a coworker of mine who was about to go on disability and thought she was terminal, she was giving away some of her personal items, and she came to me and said, "I hear you like ghosts." And I said, "Yeah, I like ghost stories, and I actually investigate haunted places." She said, "Well, I've got a haunted doll that I'd like for you to have. I was going to have my daughter take it, but she's scared of it. She won't have it." And of course, two things came to my mind. And the first one was, when I think haunted doll, I think scary Chucky running around with a knife. or I think this is complete crap. This can't be real. Haunted doll, come on. Even though I had seen haunted places, it didn't dawn on me that an item could itself could be haunted. That's just horror movie bunk, I thought. But I said to still the idea of a doll like Chucky being in my house, because I automatically thought if it's a haunted doll, it must be evil. I'd heard of the Annabelle doll, and I thought I don't want something like that in my house. And she starts telling me, no, that's not what this is. It's just a doll, but it's got a story with it. It used to belong to the daughter of a prostitute back in the late 1980s. The little girl's name was Patty. And long story short, her mom never took care of her, had her by accident out of wedlock, left her alone at night a lot of times. And this child was only about 6 or 7 years old. The neighbor gave her this doll. Her mom never bought her toys. And one night, her mom went off and left her to go entertain clients, if you know what I mean. And Patty was looking for a snack in the kitchen and found a bag of what she thought was candy and thought, Mommy's got candy. And she ate it, not knowing it was actually drugs that her mom had taken for payment from one of her clients. So Patty got sick and died in her sleep that night. And ever since then, anybody that's had the doll has experienced hauntings by a little girl spirit who they hear walking in the hall, singing, talking, giggling, tugging on their shirt tail. And I asked my coworker, I said, well, how did you get this? She said, well, I was in White Cloud, Michigan, and bought it at an estate sale from one of the distant family members of this prostitute and daughter that had the doll and swore up and down it's haunted, but if you want to buy it. And she liked collecting dolls, so and she didn't believe in ghosts, so she buys it, comes back here to Alabama, and has it in her house. And it's not 2 weeks later, her little granddaughter starts telling her that she's seeing a little girl playing with the doll, the Patty doll. And my coworker would go and look, and nobody was in there. But at night, she would start hearing a little voice in there talking and little footsteps. So she got to wondering, is there something to this doll? So she tells me about this, and I'm thinking, hey, that's a cool conversation piece. I can actually own a haunted doll, and I can tell my teammates about it, my paranormal team, and this will be kind of cool. I wasn't really taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the doll home. It's an adorable doll, little baby doll in this crawl position like this. And that night, I'm taking pictures of it to show to my teammates and go, look, I got a haunted doll. And in one of the photos, to my shock, hovering over the doll's head is a perfectly round ball, a glowing orb of light. And it only showed up in one of the pictures. And I tried taking more and it never showed up again. I said, interesting. Then I started hearing little tapping noises and a little giggle while I was watching TV one night. I would be watching TV, when I was home from work on Saturday or whatever, and leave and come back, and the channel would have changed by itself. And I got to thinking maybe there's something to this story because I had never had any activity in my little townhome apartment I was living in at that time ever. So I started leaving little voice recorders out during the night, like I would on an investigation. Never thought I'd be investigating my own home. That was kind of creepy, but uh, finally one night around 1 a.m. in the morning, I'm staying up late trying to talk to this doll and this child spirit that's supposedly there and trying to get a response. And so far, I'd caught nothing on recordings the week prior. And I'm sitting here talking. I'm half asleep. I'm sounding like a goober with this little sing-song voice, like I'm talking to a child. And I'm singing to her, anything to get her to a response on this recording. And I finally said, all right, I got to go to bed, sweetie pie. I'm cutting this off. Good night. And I turned the recording off. The next day, I'm playing it back and nothing's happening. And I'm just bummed out. And I'm thinking, I guess there's nothing to this until at the very end of the recording. And I say good night, gotta go to bed, sweetie pie, or whatever it was I said. Right before I hit the stop button, you hear a little girl's voice say, righteous. And two things happened to me simultaneously. I got excited. I said, holy crap, I've got a haunted doll. I've got this child's voice on my recorder. And the other thing that went through my mind was, what the hell did I just bring into my house?
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what got me started on the haunted items. I got to exploring more about haunted dolls. I said, I've got one now. Like it or not, I've just brought this on myself. I need to know what to do with this. And so I started exploring, trying to look and see if there were any other people with haunted dolls out there. I'd heard of the famous ones, but I wanted somebody like me, an everyday Joe that happened to have one. And I found my longtime friend Cherie Shun in Georgia, the state next to me. She has a massive collection of haunted dolls. So I started talking with her and sharing, learning some wisdom from her on how to take care of this item, treat it with respect, and if you're going to have a spirit there, you've got to have protection because it might open the door to other spirits, so forth and so on. And from there, as I started getting to know people online, I started having people, other investigators, finding out and rehoming stuff to me. Plus, my teammates on investigations, we would come across items and they would be like, can you take these, Kevin? Since you're our resident haunted collector. So here we are, 2000. That was 2013 when I got Patty. That was 10 years ago, as hard as it
Mm-hmm.
is to believe. And 10 years later, I lost count of the haunted items I have right now. I've got over 300. I know that. Mostly dolls, some haunted paintings, some tools, some old vintage toys. I've got an old cobbler stand from the 1800s that a shoemaker in Germany used to own that he supposedly haunts, but I don't have any activity from that to prove it. I've got a painting that hung in the house of a witch in Salem, Massachusetts. Um, I've got a piece of actual homework paper written by and signed by Heather O'Rourke from Poltergeist. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's the one that
I
died.
know. I've got Poltergeist here. Yep.
Yeah. She passed away in 2000. What am I saying? In 1988 at the age of 13, almost 13. And I've got a homework paper that she had completed 3 months prior to her death. It's got the date and the her little signature on it, just her name, and that was, I guess, her mom and sister decided to start parting with some of her items and put them up for auction. And it cost a little bit, but it was one of the least expensive things was to get a piece of her actual homework paper. And I have that framed in here. And I actually just out of curiosity, there was nothing saying this is a haunted item. It was just a something, from a very famous person that she owned, and is no longer with us. And I thought, wonder if I could get any activity from this thing. And I did a voice box session. We have this ghost box we use that scans radio stations and creates white noise, and it's supposed to help you hear the voices of spirits coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a few responses that sound just like her voice when I was asking questions. So whether that was her that actually came through or something imitating her, I don't know. But yeah, I've got a lot of interesting items now in this collection, but mostly it's dolls. And if I were to limit it to dolls, I've got at least almost 300 dolls in this house right now.
You
Most
know,
of them contained in one room. I've got a few in here with me in my office, but and with that comes activity. We get footsteps in the attic, we get doors closing, water running, but after a while you just get used to it and it's like an everyday thing. But nothing
yeah.
has ever harmed me, which is good.
Sean Clark. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the guy that's represented a lot of
Yes.
people for cons, and
Yeah, horrors, hallowed grounds.
yep,
Yep.
yeah. I've had him on the show a couple times, and great interview guest. But I believe if I remember correctly, I think he has one of the poltergeist dolls.
He does, and he shared it on his YouTube channel, one of
Yeah.
the videos. Oh yeah, that's a piece of good history to have right there.
Yeah, but he hasn't admitted it, dragging him under the bed, though.
Yeah.
I bet you it's done that a few times. That's why his hair stands up on end. Or we could go to the scary movie two part of it where they did
Yeah.
scared the clown, but
Scared the
scared the clown. But nonetheless, occasionally I do tribute interviews on here where I've had Alfred Hitchcock's granddaughter on here, I've had
Oh,
Audrey Hepburn's eldest son on here,
oh, awesome.
I was wondering, are you still connected with the family of Heather O'Rourke? So I'd
Not at
love to have.
all.
Okay, because
Oh,
that.
yeah. Actually, all I did was buy from through a third party who did the
Okay.
selling, so I never even got to speak to them. I do have a oh, what do you call it? Certificate of authenticity that Tammy, the sister Tammy O'Rourke, signed, showing this is an actual homework paper from Heather. And that's it. I've never spoken to them directly. I wish
Okay.
I did. I wish I had. We would have had them on our show. Back when was that? When I got that thing? It was before the pandemic, around 2019.
Mm-hmm.
When I got that, but it was through a third party seller. I never had communication with her or the mother, who I assume is still alive.
Okay.
But I wish that would be awesome. But I guess they're just extremely private.
No, I can't. I can't blame them, but nonetheless, um, this is a big thing with a lot of people, and you know, uh, I might even be able to connect you with some other podcasters who'd be interested in this as well, So, yep. But anyway, did you ever get to do the cons yourself with this? Because like I know there's probably my favorite convention is Horrorama in Toronto. It's a smaller con. I know Cindy Hines has done it. I've assisted Lisa at two of those, and I've been to four of them altogether. And they're not doing one this year, but um, they usually aim. You'll get one or two really big name guests, but they love to aim for obscure stuff as well. Like they had Lamberto Bava on for a con one year, which was a big
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah,
Um, but I know they'd be interested. They'd probably be interested in something like this. Had you ever done any conventions?
absolutely. It's man, just locally here. We have a few in Alabama here, like the Alabama Comic Con that I've been a
Hmm.
guest at. Several in Memphis. In fact, probably my favorite was one that they had me at one year. Graceland, Elvis's house in Memphis. Elvis Presley, on the property where the Graceland mansion is, they now have a hotel called the Guest House at Graceland. It's a nice hotel, big hotel with a convention center, and they had a sci-fi kind of a sci-fi horror fantasy convention there with just a few celebrities, and mainly the other guests were people like me, artists and authors there to sell their work and speak to panels and everything. So I got to actually be there right next door to the Graceland Mansion, be a guest at the convention, selling my books, and at the same time getting to see all this Elvis history around me. I wanted to tour the mansion, but the whole time I stayed in the convention because, hey, I got to sell books, I got to eat. So I stayed there all 3 days and at my table like a good boy and sold my books and got to know people there. But yeah, I love doing those. It was fun. And, you know, before I got to do that, I was always, going back to around 2010, I was always a customer or fan at these conventions, getting to meet these celebrities and stuff. And so it was pretty interesting to be on the other side of the table signing autographs at a convention. but they're fun. I love doing those, and the panels are really great. Where
Mhm.
I've stood up and talked to people about what I do, and I've shown on projector some videos and photos of evidence I've captured, and it's always fun to get to see people's reactions when I show the photos I've gotten and the videos of strange anomalies and voices. And one girl got so freaked out, I think she already didn't like dolls. So I'm surprised she was there to begin with, but she got up halfway through and had to leave the room. And her mom was sitting there. She said, yeah, she was about to have a panic attack. She was scared. And I mean, it's not funny. I shouldn't laugh, but it just struck me funny that she came in the first place. I'm like, well, that's what this is, haunted dolls. So, but yeah, I love doing those.
Yeah. Have you ever, it sounds off topic, but have you met any people from the movies there that just blew your mind?
Yeah, several of them. My first convention I went to was the first one that the director John Carpenter was and he was the guest of honor. It was his first
Hmm.
convention appearance, and I have always been a big fan of his from way back when I was a little kid and we'd watch the Halloween movies. I remember in the mid 80s, all they had was Halloween 1, 2, and 3. They didn't have the rest of the sequels yet. And we'd watch the little part 1 through 3 marathon, in the late 80s until they started finally putting more sequels out. But of course, other movies of his I loved The Fog, Escape from New York, and most everything he's done. So when I got there, it was a long line, a very long line wrapped around to see him. And they were trying to do, I bought a VIP ticket thinking that'll be smart. It'll put me early on to get an autograph. But even the VIP line was like 200 people or more. And it was just a
Oh,
long line wrapped around. They had to, it was in the really big Sheraton Hotel in Dallas, Texas. And they've got
hmm.
2 or 3 levels in the convention center alone. They uh, turned the second floor into just John Carpenter, so the line could just wrap all around. And it was so
Wow.
bad that, but this is what an awesome guy he is. It was so bad that by the second hour of being in line, some of us are sitting down. And it's Texas. It's hot. It was early summer. He, out of the kindness of his heart, had one of the hotel employees, and he paid for it out of his pocket, come out and come down the line of fans and serve us water, fruit, chips, snacks, sodas,
Oh, wow.
And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, John Carpenter is giving us snacks and water. He felt that bad for us out here. And well, a few times I saw him come out and I was excited. He came out to go tell, he smokes and he had to have a smoke break.
Hmm.
And he'd glance and give that, huh, John Carpenter kind of, at that long line. I guess he felt bad for us. And I finally, after 3 hours of waiting, get to the table where he is, you know, not even really thinking about what I was going to say. I was just going to be, the usual, I just love your work and thank you. And, please sign my DVD and all that, And I get up to him, and then all of a sudden I'm just tongue tied and I can't speak. And he's looking at me like, huh? Huh? Finally I spoke. I said, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say thank you. I love your movies. I was just wondering, could I have a picture with you while I'm here getting this autograph? And he granted it. And he stood up and propped his elbow on my shoulder like he was my buddy and took a picture with me. And that was my first big blown away meeting a celebrity. And I've always heard, be careful, don't meet your favorite celebrities because sometimes they can be a big a hole in real life. But not him. He was just as kind as he can be. And
I'm gonna say this. They say that, but I mean, I've always loved Lisa Langlois from class of 1984, and she invited me to a sister at that was my first time out in New Brunswick here. And I was in my 40s at the time. And she and I have remained friends. I heard from her today actually, because making preparations for when I go to Toronto and do Frightmare in the Falls. But anyway, I spend a little bit of time with Lisa when I'm up there, because like it's kind of like with you and Cindy, like we exchange Christmas gifts there at Christmas time and like through the mail and whatnot, like um yeah. It's funny because she's done these movies, but I think of her as a friend. And another one that's like that with me is Nancy McLaughlin from Friday the
Oh
13th, Part
yeah.
6, Jason Lives. Yeah, she is
Oh,
Nancy is absolutely wonderful, and I had her on this year, and I just turned 51, and she PayPal'd me some money to go out to dinner to treat myself out, and she didn't
wow.
have to do that, you
Wow.
know? Yeah. There's a lot
I,
of lovely people out there, in the industry that um
oh,
are so awesome, and so but
oh, you just and then I gotta tell you, the horror ones are the ones that have been the nicest that I've met. And you just reminded me of another convention. I didn't, unfortunately, I didn't get to meet her. She, by the time I was starting to get to go to conventions, she started getting ill and had to cancel her appearances. But Betsy Palmer, who played Mrs.
hmm
Voorhees in Friday the 13th, the sweetest woman, here she is playing this nightmare in this movie, this nightmare killer woman. But she was so sweet in real life. And there was a fan that went to her table. I think it was the Dallas convention I was talking, not the same one that I went to, but a few years before that when she was still doing them and before she got sick. A fan was at her table. He had been waiting uh, for this trip to come just to get to meet her. He wanted to get her autograph. And he got there. I don't know if it was jet lag or what it was, but he was feeling very sick. But he decided to go and, at least I got to go see Betsy Palmer. I got to see Mrs. Voorhees. So he went to her table. I guess she could, her being a mother in real life, the motherly instinct she kicked in. He said she looked at him and right away she said, "Oh, you're not feeling well, are you?" And he said, "No, I'm just," he said, "I'm not catchy or anything, but I just, yeah, I'm feeling kind of like I can't eat and everything, but I still want to come down here and enjoy the convention before I go get in bed, lock myself up." And she said, "Well, I hope you do fine, that you feel better." And he told her his name and so she could sign the photo to him. And then and it kind of struck him as odd. She said, "What room are you in?" He told her. He wondered why she was asking that. She said, "Well, I hope you get to feeling better and that you get to come down and see me again here at my table." And so he goes up and he's finished with the convention and he's gone up to his room in the hotel. And there's a knock on a knock on the door a few hours later. And he opens the door and there's one of the room service people with this tray with soup and something else, some kind of I don't know if it's medication or what it was, or some kind of herbal thing that Betsy Palmer had sent to the room for him, and a letter from her saying, "Please take these items here and mix them together and drink that, and you'll feel much better. And I hope you get to come back down to the convention." So he did. He mixed it together. I think it was some kind of herbs and tea, and he drank it and felt much better. The next morning, he went down and thanked her, and she got up and just hugged him. And talk about going above and beyond. I mean, that was
That
just
is
an amazing
awesome.
story to hear. That she would have herbal stuff sent to his room and tea, medicine basically for him to take and feel better because she felt so sorry for him. And everybody said, that was how she was. She was so sweet and precious. And it's amazing gifted actors these people are to play parts like Mrs. Voorhees or some of these killers like Freddy and Jason, and then you meet the real actors in real life. They're just as nice as they can be, and it just shows what kind of acting range they have that they can pull off that kind of a scary performance and be the nicest people you'd ever meet in real life.
That is awesome. I've heard nice things about Betsy Palmer. I've never had her on here, but my second guest I've ever had on here when I started doing the podcast in 2015 was Adrienne King, and I
I
met her.
love her.
I met her
Yes. Oh,
last year. Oh, I had a crush on her when I first saw that movie. So I get a picture of her on Facebook where um, in the picture I'm giving her a hug, and
yes.
yeah, I had to.
Yeah, I've got the same kind of pity. Yeah, she would. She. Yeah, I got to meet her at the Atlanta convention we have here, Days of the Dead, Atlanta. And she told me, she says, now and it was after she signed the photo and she made sure we got a good picture together, hugged up. And then she wouldn't let me go without saying, she goes, and now I always give my fellow campers a hug. So come here. And she gave me just this big squeezy hug. And again, there's another one, just some of the nicest people in the horror genre.
I'll give you another one. You ever get the chance to meet Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp?
Yes. Yes, I
Oh
have a
my
couple of times.
goodness.
She's
Yeah.
funny and she gets up and she's so energetic.
Yep. And she's a hugger as well,
I've
and
seen
I'm
that.
going to tell you, she made an impression on me when I met her. I haven't had her on here yet, I'd like to make that happen, but she's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I got to see her a couple of times. The first time was in Lexington at what do they call it? Scarefest,
Hmm.
horror and paranormal. And I got on the elevator to go to my room. I don't think it was when I first got there. It was coming out of the convention. I decided to go up and take a break in my room. I get on the elevator and there's Felissa Rose and I think the guy in the movie with her, his name is Jonathan Tiersten,
Okay.
are on the elevator talking, and I'm having this almost fanboy reaction, like, "Oh my God, sleepaway camp right here on the elevator." And I hadn't seen her at the convention yet, and she turned around with that big toothy smile and smiled, "Hey, how you doing?" It was just so friendly, and Jonathan too. And
Yeah.
yeah, just amazing people.
I met her and she was there with Dave Sheridan. And I know Dave Sheridan from Scary Movie as Officer Doofy. And I
Yes.
I asked both of them, I said, when are we going to get the Angela Officer Doofy crossover? Anyway, yeah, they're pretty awesome. No, you're an author. And forgive me for my ignorance because I just discovered your webpage. Well, like I said, there's so many Kevin Kanes on the internet, and I didn't spot your webpage link on your Facebook until doing some prep before the interview today. So, how many books have you written?
I have written, I think it's 14, and I've got number 15 almost finished. So I should have it out definitely before Halloween, but I'm hoping it's next month. I'll have it out. It's a book about urban legends and some creative stories I've written based on urban legends. I've been wanting to do an urban legend book for years, and finally I've gotten around to it. But yeah, I've got uh, so that'll be book number 15, and all of them except for one are out there on my website. There's one book I wrote that's strictly ebook, so you have to get that on Kindle. And it's the screenplay I wrote called Haunts. And the screenplay format is it's out there on ebook for sale on Kindle. But the rest are all novels you can get in or books you can get in paperback. Some of them are hardback, and uh, they're all on paperback and Kindle, and a couple of them are on audiobook. But I do have all of them for sale out there on myhauntedDolls.com if you want an autograph copy. I was trying to price it a little under the prices on Amazon, but I think they might be lower now. I don't know, but the people can buy them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kindle. There are a couple of them on audiobook. One is performed by an actress. It's a book I wrote called Crimson, the Blood Painting, which is based on that haunted painting I mentioned earlier from Salem, Massachusetts. And the other one is called Legends of Indian Narrows, which is a book of the ghost stories of my old neighborhood that I grew up in. And I actually performed that on audiobook. So you get to hear me tell the stories on there.
Hmm.
My first and only time recording an audiobook, and it took hours. And I said, I don't know if I could ever do that again. So, but yeah, myhauntedolls.com has all my links on it too. It's got the link to my Redbubble store if people want to buy t-shirts, baseball hats, or gosh, there's pet accessories, office accessories, all kinds of things out there. And I have a podcast too called The Haunted Collection. There's a link to that on there. So
Okay.
definitely everybody check that out.
So you mentioned you had what'd you say, 300 dolls?
Yeah, the last count was over 200 and I stopped counting. I know I've gotten well over 100 more added to that since I last counted. So yeah, it's over 300 somewhere.
Because I saw the pictures on your website of the crawling doll. You know that one there.
Yeah, Patty Doll, that's the one. Yeah,
That's a Patty doll?
that's the one, the story I told earlier. That was my very first haunted doll. And there's a video clip of that audio where I caught her saying righteous on the recording.
There you go. So, talk about some of the other dolls you have in your collection that are quite notable. Excuse me.
Definitely. One of them is Patty. Not, we already talked about Patty. One of them is Robin. That's a doll. When I do conventions, especially, I like to take her because not only because of the story, but because she still has the markings on her from the tragedy. She belonged to a 3-year-old girl uh, named Robin. The doll is a tiny, they call it a tiny, chatty baby. And it came out in the early 60s. It's one of those that had the cord in the back of the neck that you pull it and it would talk.
Or like a Woody doll.
Yes. You pull it and it'd say, feed me and stuff like that. The cord is gone and doesn't work anymore. But strangely enough, sometimes the eyes still move from side to side on their own sometimes. I've not caught that on video yet, but I have seen it happen. And but Robin, it was around 1963. I can't remember now what state it was in. It might have been. She came from my friend AJ, who is a big haunted collector. She's got a lot of haunted dolls, more than me. And I don't remember if it was her state where it came from or somewhere in the Midwest, I believe. But Robin was only 3 years old. She was being babysat one hot summer day, and her babysitter was driving around town running some errands, driving one of those classic, big 60s cars. It looks like a tank. Um, so it's going to be uncomfortable inside when it's hot. And the babysitter apparently cared more about getting a drink than she did babysitting because she decided, I'm going to go to the bar and have me some drinks for a while. So she pulls up with this 3-year-old child in the back seat she's supposed to be taking care of, gets out and closes and locks the door, leaves little Robin in the back seat with her doll, this same doll I have, and goes in the bar and chug-a-lugs beer for about 3 or 4 hours, leaving that child in the hot metal car out there in summer weather. And of course, poor little Robin succumbed to the heat and died from heat exposure. So her doll was there with her, and the arms are discolored, and a couple of the fingers are melted in from the heat from that sun exposure that day. So AJ got it from the family, I believe, that some of Robin's relatives, and they said, her little ghost still haunts that doll to this day because its eyes move. You hear her talking, little footsteps, tugging on the tail of her t-shirt like a child trying to get your attention. And I've had that happen since I've had the doll. But I've used the spirit box with the doll and I've gotten full sentences from this little spirit. She's very talkative. A spirit box scans 5 radio stations per second, and it puts out this white noise, kind of a noise. You might hear a quick blip of a radio station, but you're not, because it's doing 5 per second. It's too fast to hear words or a full sentence. and I'm
Mhm.
getting full sentences on this spirit box from this little girl answering my questions. I asked her, "How old are you, Robin?" She says, 3. And I can't remember the other thing she said, but then I paused for a minute, to let the spirit box run. And you hear her call my name, Kevin. And I said, "Yes, what is it?" She goes, "I love you." And that's out there on my YouTube channel, My Haunted Dolls. I've got the video. But that, I've gotten some amazing spirit box responses from that doll. Uh, I have not been able to get proof of that story, although the doll is kind of proof enough with the melting and the
I was
discoloration. But
gonna ask whether the babysitter got.
yeah, I would like to know. And AJ did not know. I said, "Did she get arrested?" I mean, it was the early 60s, but they still had laws back then too. So I don't know what happened to her. Um, Another notable doll I have that I was able to find actually an article online about her is Andrea, which is a really pretty doll I have in there that belonged to a little girl named Andrea in St. Louis, Missouri. Her grandmother had bought it for her because the doll looked so much like Andrea with long strawberry blonde hair and blue eyes. Andrea loved to go swimming. And around 1994, she was about 8 years old. She was swimming in her neighbor's pool with her friends. The adults were sitting around on the patio, and they were playing this game where they'd go down to the bottom of the pool and see how long they would sit and see how long they could hold their breath, who could stay down the longest. Well, Andrea, with her long hair, gets down there, and when she tries to get back up, her hair got caught in the drain and it held her there. So the kids go up, they surface. Nobody pays attention, and Andrea has not come up yet. By the time one of the adults looks around and realizes, hey, we're missing a kid, and he sees her at the bottom of the pool, he dives in after her, gets her hair loose, but by then she's already drowned. And he gets her up to the side of the pool, CPR. It was too late. And her family swore they heard her little spirit talking around that doll her grandmother gave her. So my friend AJ also had that doll and gave it to me. And I've gotten some spirit box responses from Andrea. Uh, AJ told me, she said she loves books. Apparently, she liked to read books when she was alive. So watch out for any activity with books. And sure enough, I had a room with my books on display on the shelves, and some of them are my old childhood books from back in the 80s. I would come home and find some of those books laying on the floor off the shelf, and there's nobody there but me, and my cat couldn't do that. So one night, I woke up. Well, I wasn't asleep yet, but I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I heard in the kitchen some pots and pans moving around. And my cat, laying next to me, sat up looking toward the bedroom door because the kitchen was right outside there in the old house I lived in. So, of course, when I sit up to look, there's nobody in there. But I noticed for just a few seconds there was a little girl in the doorway peeking around looking at me, and she darted back and disappeared. Of course, when I go to look, she's gone. But the little girl looked exactly like the Andrea doll. And I think that was her. But because it was in the 90s and the internet was kind of around back then, I did a search and I was able to find an article online about Andrea drowning in the pool that day back in 1994. So it was good to have a real piece of evidence that this person did exist. It's not just a story somebody made up and put with this doll. So I'm trying to think of what another one I've got in there, another doll. I call her my very own Annabelle doll because she had a demonic attached to her. I had to bless that thing before I let it come in my home. But she came from Baton Rouge. The doll's name is Lori.
Hmm.
She was purchased online on eBay by this girl that wanted a haunted doll. Like I mentioned earlier, ever since the ghost hunting shows have started, and now the ghostly item shows you see on down here in the US. We have Travel Channel has all these paranormal shows. It's a big thing. The Conjuring movies and Annabelle movies came out, and suddenly haunted items are a big interest. Everybody wants to get a haunted doll. Here I am. I've already had experience in it. And I'm telling people these are not toys. You don't want to get involved in something like this. It's not like the movies. You don't buy a haunted doll to have a party with. These are serious, things that you have to be respectful of. But this lady bought a haunted doll online from some lady that claimed to be a witch and that this was a doll haunted by a protective spirit like an angel. She gets this thing to her house. It gets shipped to her house. And the next 2 weeks, she and her roommate are waking up with scratches on their arms. They're having violent nightmares. One morning, she woke up feeling a hand choking her, and nobody was there. And all this didn't happen until the doll came in the house. So apparently, she and I have a mutual friend who told her about me and pointed her to my Facebook page, My Haunted Dolls. So she contacted me, and I know the person is serious when they beg me to take an item and they don't ask me to pay for it. They'll like, just tell me
Oh,
where to send
wow.
it. I've had some scammers say, "Oh, I've got this nightmare doll that I got to get rid of, $500 and it's yours." Okay, if that was really a problem, you wouldn't be asking for money. But this woman was legitimate. She's like, just tell me where to send it. I got to get rid of it. So I told her, I had an address set up for shipping the items to for people that needed to get rid of items. I still do. It's on my website.
You're telling me that's
And
not just apartments and credit cards, that people are scamming with dolls now. Like
yeah, I mean,
friggin' scammers.
eBay is loaded with them out there. The people saying, I've got this haunted book. One girl had a book she claimed was haunted by Edgar Allan Poe, and she asked for $10,000 for this book.
Hmm?
And that just, oh, there's the kitty cat.
Skittles.
Hello, Skittles.
It's a Skittles. Skittles. You avoided it the first time and then you came back. Second time's a charm.
But
Skittles is
speak,
like Skittles. Skittles
speaking
is
of,
like, you're exploiting me.
yeah,
You're my buddy. He's my buddy.
speaking of cats too, my cat is a really good means of being able to verify if a haunted item has a good or bad spirit with it. If it's because cats are sensitive, people claim, and mine certainly is. She'll go up if I have one of my dolls sitting out and she likes it or likes the spirit. She'll go up and she'll lay curled up next to that doll. She'll rub against it. But a few I've had come through, if she didn't like them, she would run. And this Lori doll I'm talking about was one of them. She ran from that doll when I brought it in the house, and that was unlike her. But I blessed that sucker when that dog got here, and I kept in touch with the lady in Baton Rouge for a few weeks after to make sure she and her roommate were okay, and they were. But she overnighted that doll to me. I don't know how much she paid, but she overnighted that thing to me and didn't ask for any money. She just wanted to get rid of it. And I know there's something to it because one of my teammates came over. They like to come over and look at my collection sometimes and try out the equipment on it, see if they get anything. And he does not like dolls. He would usually stay away from the dolls. But this particular investigator was drawn to the Lori doll. And I saw him get right up under her looking at it. And he turns around, his eyes are just bugging. And he starts begging me to let him take that doll home. Now, this is unlike my teammate. He does not like dolls. He hates them. And it was almost like something was possessing him. And I said, D, you need to come out of the room now. Get away from that doll. Let's get you out of the room. And one of our teammates who was sensitive, she was picking up on it too. She said something's wrong. So we got him out of the room, and suddenly he was back to his old self. Like, he didn't know what had just happened. So I tell people when they come in the room where the Lori doll is, I've got her way up high so nobody will mess with her. She is sealed up in a case like Annabelle. I've got holy water in there covering the doll and the sides of the box. And I tell people, do not touch it, do not look at it, just leave it alone because we don't want to give her any attention in case there's something still there. But she has not bothered anybody else since I blessed her, and my cat isn't scared of her anymore, so that's a good thing. I warn people all the time, haunted dolls is a serious thing. It's not something to play with. It's not something to try to be Zach Bagans about. You've got to be careful and be respectful. And it's not collecting haunted items is not for everybody. You have to know what you're doing and be experienced in the paranormal before you even think about getting into it. And that's my 2 cents about haunted collecting there.
No, no, this has been very interesting. So, what do you have coming up? Do you got another book coming up? Any dolls coming?
I don't have any new items coming right now, but yeah, the new book is going to be called Urban Darkness is the name of it. And it's like I say, stories I've written that are based on urban legends, several stories in there. Some of them just for fun. I took two urban legends and combined them into one story, to have fun with it, like the legend of Cropsy, the camp killer, and the legend of the hook on the car door. I put both of those in one story, things like that, just having fun with it. So that should be out hopefully by next month. I'm trying to finish the last thing in there. I'm almost wrapping it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and send it on to Amazon Publishing and let them get it out there. And I do have a convention coming up here in my state, here in southern Alabama, at Ozark, Alabama. We have the Deep South Paranormal Convention. I'm going to be there August 20th. It's a Saturday. It's just 2 weeks from now, less than 2 weeks, I guess. And I will have a couple of haunted dolls on display, and I'll be selling my books and signing those. And usually we have things come up in October, but I'm going to be taking a cruise in October just to, with everything going on the past year. I got to have a little vacation. So I'm
You don't
taking a,
take the dolls on a cruise?
yeah, but sometimes usually we do, and I might, depending on when they schedule it, I might still do an event here in October. But we usually have a book signing. Me and my friend Kim Johnston, who is the head investigator for Scare of Alabama. She's
Hmm.
also a published author. We'll have events here at some of our local haunted places where we sell our books and we take the public on a investigation of the haunted place so they can see how we do it, what we do, and experience a ghost hunting investigation themselves. We always pick a safe place. We don't go to any, place where there's something evil. But she may still, I mean, I don't know when she will do that in October. There's nothing scheduled yet. Depending on when she schedules it, I may or may not be part of it this year. We just did one last month, right after the 4th of July. So she should have one in October. Other than that, I don't have anything else coming up yet.
Well, you know what? This has been quite interesting, I wasn't sure what I was going into with this, but when somebody recommends somebody to me, I like to me, my show's open to anybody, and I love treats like this where I hear stuff interesting, and this has certainly been an interesting story, and a special acknowledgement to Cindy Hines for connecting us. I would
Yes.
like to ask this though. Has there been any these paranormal movies or whatnot that from your perspective you think are full of crap? Like the
Oh, there.
worst representation of it.
As much as I love the Conjuring movies and Ed and Lorraine Warren, the real life Ed and Lorraine Warren, it's based on. In fact, I mentioned earlier I got to meet the Annabelle doll in Connecticut a few years ago. I got to meet Lorraine's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
Ed and Lorraine's daughter, uh, and her husband, who now take care of the museum that Ed and Lorraine left behind. Both of them have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But the Conjuring movies, I love them, but Conjuring 2 is so far from what actually happened. I still love the movie, but I can't help but feel a little irritation watching it going, none of this, 80% of this didn't really happen like this. Ed and Lorraine had very little to do with that investigation. You got this whole movie where they're there and they're helping the family and they've got this scary nun showing up when in reality, they were probably there for a day and barely talked to the family. They were sent there by the church just to see, is this a hoax or not? And that part isn't, they do incorporate that in the movie, but it's so drawn out. They're being there and fighting this demon. And it's like, that's really not what happened in the real life incident. They were barely there for probably an hour and left. So it blew my mind that when Conjuring 2 was being done, they said it's the infield haunting, the poltergeist. That blew my mind because it's like that's not really a Ed and Lorraine case. They barely touched that. They were just there as observers for just a little while and went back home. They didn't do any demon battle there. But the first Conjuring stayed more toward the original,
I like that
what
first
actually
one. Yeah, I
happened.
saw that in the theater. I seen them all in the theater, and but that first one was good and shocking. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the last Annabelle movie, where they had not only Annabelle, but all the haunted items, some of the effects they use for like the werewolf, whatever was in there, looked kind of cartoonish to me. I didn't like that. And in reality, I don't think they have. Ed and Lorraine did investigate a werewolf case. I think that was in England or somewhere, but they didn't bring back a haunted item or object from that case. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a man who was getting possessed by some sort of evil spirit that caused him to be like a werewolf. So to have that in the Annabelle movie confused me. I'm like, there's not an object in that in that collection that has anything to do with that werewolf, let alone a werewolf ghost because the guy's still alive. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So, but still, I love the movies. They're fun to watch, and the first two Annabelle movies I like better than that last one. But yeah, other than that, nothing's really irritated me out of the movies I've seen because I kind of expect them to be for Hollywood to take a lot of leeway there when they
Oh yeah.
create their version of it. They're going to add their twist and make it this in your face thing. I've even seen that with TV. Some of these travel channel shows where they show, there's a show called A Haunting
Mm-hmm.
that every episode is a real ghost story that happened to somebody. But one of the stories, my friend um, Kim Johnston, I mentioned earlier, was actually in one of the episodes because it was one of the cases she investigated before I met her. And it took place here in Alabama. And yeah, they took some of that, what really happened, and really dramatized it for the episode. And I told her, I said, just watch when that episode airs. They're going to dramatize it. It's going to be way more dramatic than what actually happened to you. And sure enough, she and I had a laugh over that. I wasn't there in that investigation. That happened before I met her. But it's just funny how they just take um, leeway there and just over exaggerate what actually happened because they got to have something that's going to wow the audience.
Yeah.
And that can be irritating sometimes, but I understand why they're doing it because the audience has to have something to keep them excited.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It is pretty awesome, to have you on here today. And I might know another podcast or two that I think would be interested in these stories as well. So I'm going to see what I can do to make some connections for you. But nonetheless, this has been a lot of fun. And hopefully we'll get you at whether the conventions up here in Toronto, or well, up here in Toronto, I'm in New Brunswick, but up in Toronto, and we can finally meet. But nonetheless, it was this has been great and wow, would you say 13 books?
It's actually 14, and then this
14?
new one will be
Wow.
book number 15, if I'm counting correctly. This new one's going to be book number 15.
What's your scariest?
That would be the Patty doll, the novel I wrote called Patty Doll, based on the real Patty doll that talked about earlier. I took her story and made a fictional novel, a novel length story based on that. But I had to have some kind of villain, and the villain I wrote for that is so dirty and so nasty that I scared myself writing that, because he's basically a man who likes to harm children, because this is a child spirit. And I wrote the story uh, where Patty's doll winds up with a little girl and her father, and I sort of incorporated my experiences with her into their story. And so I thought, if I have a child hero, I got to have, what's the worst thing for a child would be a child killer, a child molester. And I thought, I love kids, so I'm like, I don't know if I can write this. And it was
It's
like
kind of like a
acting.
Freddy Krueger thing.
Yeah, it was like, writing can be a lot like acting. You have to put your mind into that character, even though it's something that makes you uncomfortable. And I just went all out on that book. And even my sister read it and was like, I can't believe that came out of your head. This guy was so vile. In fact, I found myself looking over my shoulder, watching out for this guy, even though he's totally fictional. It's not beyond, reality that somebody like that could exist, that likes to kill kids and hurt kids. And that's happened a lot, unfortunately, a lot in history. So that was the scariest character I've ever created and written, and I did not like him, and I'm glad I gave him his just desserts in that book. But that's probably the scariest one I've written. But funny enough, it's the one people tell me they like the most, because it's got that frightening. When you've got a child's life at stake, that's very frightening. It's not easy to write either, I'll tell you.
No, no. Well, you know what? It was wonderful having you come on here today. And again, I bid you a lot of luck. I hope you have fun on your cruise this fall, but
Thank
hopefully you'll
you.
get to do a convention as well, make everything complete.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll go to conventions. If I'm not a guest, I'll still go to them just to be a fanboy and get autographs.
Mm-hmm.
I love conventions.
Have you met Cindy yet?
Not yet. I want to. I asked her in our phone call one time if she would ever come down here to the U.S. if they ever invite her. She said, "Oh yeah, I just haven't had anybody invite me." So these conventions need to get her down here. They can get her and Art Hindle
Mm-hmm.
from the Brood as a duo package. Get them down here, because there's a lot of fans in the U.S. that love the Brood and that love the other one Art Hindle did, Black Christmas. You probably know that one.
I've interviewed several people from Black Christmas. Yep. Actually, it's interesting because one of the, I think it was 2019, I was in Toronto for a week, and there was a double screening of White and Black Christmas. And
Interesting.
I called Lisa and asked her if she wanted to join me. And she said she wasn't interested in White Christmas, but she said Black Christmas, yes, because it was shot in Toronto and she knew a few people in it. So I went to White Christmas and they had a fairly decent attendance. Black Christmas was packed. And Lisa met me for that. I got her a ticket. And I remember when the movie was done, Lisa called Art Hindle to ask him if he still had that jacket he had in the film. And apparently, yes, he does.
Oh wow, that's really awesome.
I also love Invasion of the Body Snatchers that he was in as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I'm hoping to meet Cindy this fall whenever if I go out. She's not one of the guests, but I'm there. I imagine it can't be too difficult to meet her someplace. I have met a few of my guests when I've gone to Toronto, and connect with them.
That's
So,
good.
yeah.
I definitely hope to
Anyway,
meet her one day.
yeah, there you go. Well, she's a sweetheart, that's for sure.
Yes.
Anyway, I thank you for coming on here. I bid you a wonderful day. Would you like to promote your web page and your books before we close off?
Yes. Again, my website is myhauntedDolls.com. And that's also the name of my Facebook page that I do for the haunted items and books. And it's also my YouTube channel's name, My Haunted Dolls, where I've got my videos. Every week I post a new video showing off an item and doing a investigation with it. And I have a podcast that I do every couple of weeks called The Haunted Collection, where I don't have guests or anything. It's just me telling my favorite horror stories and ghost stories and talking about my favorite haunted places and sometimes stories about my haunted items. So it's just a little 30-minute show I do every couple of weeks. So that's linked there. And my store, my Redbubble store, please. I do have a shop on myhauntedDolls.com where you can buy my books, or you can follow the link, and please do, to my Redbubble store where you can buy t-shirts, hats, and all kinds of accessories and neat things out there with some images I've created with my haunted dolls and my website logo and everything. So please check that out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
This is Kevin Kane, the Haunted Collection, and you are listening to Greg. Oh gosh, I already forgot. What
Greg
is it
Gilbert
again?
on Python's Paradise.
Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise. My brain is so fried on writing and claims lately.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's
say that
okay.
say that again, because if I don't write it down, I'm going to mess it up.
Greg Gilbert, Python's Paradise.
Greg Gilbert, Python's Paradise.
Hmm.
There we go. I'm going to get it this time. This is Kevin Kane, the Haunted Collector, and you're listening to Greg Albert on Python's Paradise.
Greg Gilbert.
Oh, is that? I didn't say Albert. God, I am so sorry. This is Kevin Kane, and you're. No, let me start that over again. This is Kevin Kane, the Haunted Collector, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
There you go.
Did I get it? I said
You got.
Albert the first time, didn't I?
You know what? I've had a few people flub it up, and I don't take offense to that.
My job and my writing, all that I do every day, and it fries my brain to where I'm getting to where people can tell me their name, their whole name, and 10 seconds later, I've forgotten the last name or whatever.
Hmm.
It is a mess. I used to have such a good head about things and names and faces.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? You have yourself a wonderful day, and thank you so much for allowing me the honor to chat with you. And a special shout out to Cindy Hines for connecting us.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. This has been great.
It's been fun. You have a blessed day.
And you too.
Take care.